here, and welcome back to another Legion Alpha tank video. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Protection Paladin. I've been keeping my eye on it, and it recently received a couple of very important mechanic changes. So I felt that now it was appropriate for me to go ahead and do an updated impressions, being that it did change. That's the same with the Brewmaster that's going to be coming next. Um, in short, the prot paladin has not been having a great time in the Legion Alpha. It's been having a little bit of a difficult change with the removal of holy power and sort of the rotation, the way that it plays, to the point that most people that love Protection Paladin have been hating it. And in fact, one of my favorite YouTubers, Preach, from Preach Gaming, he called it an insult to his keyboard when he played it. He recently did a very big tank comparison video. Although I wish he would have waited a little bit for the Paladin, being that the Paladin and the Brewmaster were receiving changes. But I mean, he probably had already made the video, so it was beyond that point. It doesn't matter. Point being that Paladin's been going through some changes. I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of them today. Let's move away from the Shaman because it's distracting me, because I'm that type of person. Anyways, so my experience with the Prot Paladin as of WoD is he is my ult, and I am very much aware that Prot Paladins were fantastic at the beginning of the expansion. In WoD, Prot Paladins were fantastic in Heimel and BRF, although BRF was mostly overshadowed by the fact that Brewmaster Monks were stupidly OP, and they were good. I mean, they feel like they were strong at the beginning, but they fell short very, very quickly as gear scaling went up and Brewmasters rose to prominence, and into HFC, Paladins were terrible. Honestly, they just were. They take more damage than the tanks, they have less effective HP than other tanks, even though they're a shield tank. They're very squishy. They go up and down. Their active mitigation isn't the most reliable thing, and that's the truth of the matter. The only reason I made it my ult was because some of the changes they made in Hellfire Citadel months after release, combined with their class trinket and item upgrades, Prot Paladins right now in WoD can do almost as much or more DPS than DPS classes on fights. It's a lot of fun. It very much goes into that mentality of when you're overgearing content, when you don't need to be as defensive, you just burst out a bunch of DPS. Now, doing as much or more than a DPS is not okay. Let's just be honest here. You're a tank. You need to focus on tanking and doing DPS when tanking is not necessary, but in no way, shape, or form do I think it's appropriate for a tank to be out DPSing DPS players. It doesn't make it a fun environment for them. It's super fun for tanks, but it's not an appropriate way to be. You should be trying to maximize your DPS, and it should be, 70% of a DPS, sure, but you should never be, stomping on them, which I have done in my raids. So enough about that. Essentially, we're leaving WoD. Prot Paladin is fun to play, but was weak and needed a lot of boost to bring it up. And this was their chance here in Legion to fix those little problems that they had, maybe raise their HP, maybe change a little bit of how their active mitigation worked, especially since you're taking advantage of the fact that you're taking away holy power. But how has that actually worked out? Well, that's what we're going to be taking a look at. For the most part, Prot Paladins still play very similar to how they used to, even though they don't have holy power anymore. So let's look at first, not the map because that's the wrong button. First, let's go ahead and take a look at their mastery. Their mastery is still the same. It's going to increase damage reduction from Shield of Righteous by 8% and increase your chance to block, as well as giving you attack power, just like every tank's mastery gives attack power. Haste is still going to be reducing cooldowns for the majority of your abilities. If you notice here, tooltips have been changed. When there's a green number, it means that is specifically reduced by haste. And as you can see here, pretty much everything is reduced by haste. All your major abilities are reduced by haste. So haste is still going to be a very important stat. To the point that when I was leveling my Prot Paladin and the leveling realms, it felt god-awful. I'm just going to throw it out here before we even talk about spells. Playing the Prot Paladin at a low haste gear, which is not necessarily how you're going to encounter it, especially if you have even a little bit of gear from Hellfire Citadel or Tanan. At low haste levels, it does not feel good to just run around playing as a Paladin. It really doesn't. But when I was doing a dungeon, which you get scaled up to level 110, your stats can increase a little bit. The scaling of your stat and your percentage and everything changed. It felt much better. Much, much better. It was still very much a linear progression, but it felt better than it did before. So we're going to go ahead and talk about spells and everything, and then I'll go ahead and explain what it was with the rotation and everything that was causing such an uproar in the Paladin community. So first of all, you still have Guardian of Ancient Kings as your shield wall. It's going to empower you with the Spirit of Ancient Kings, reduce all damage you take by 50%, and the cool thing is you actually turn into the Guardian of Ancient Kings this time. Pretty neat. I love transformative effects. Makes it much clearer when it's on you. I like it. I like it. It's a 5-minute cooldown though. So I swear I can't even remember right now if Guardian of Ancient Kings is a 3-minute or 5-minute on live, but I know that much of the tank cooldowns haven't increased the time. Light of the Protector is your new replacement for Word of Glory. This heals you for 25% of your missing health, and its effect is increased while standing in consecration. Before, consecration kind of felt like pointless to use. In the Legion Alpha, in live, and ever since forever, Paladins have always used it in single target, doesn't matter, and that's why they went ahead and added that to Light of the Protector. You want to be standing in your consecration all the time. You use it on cooldown. It's very important. It boosts more than just Light of the Protector. But Light of the Protector is interesting because it very specifically heals you for 25% of the missing health. Missing. So if you're not missing a lot of health and use it, it's pitiful heal. If you're missing a lot of health and use it, it's a decent heal. It's never going to top you off, but it can be significant when used under the right circumstances. If you're less than half HP, standing in your consecration, have some things boosting it, you can heal for a shit ton. You really, really can. It's a very powerful thing to keep in mind. This is not something you're going to be using all the time. It has a decent cooldown, it's reduced by haste and everything, but it is like an emergency, very much like Word of Glory. Then you have Hammer of Justice. It's going to stun the target 6 seconds for a 1-minute cooldown. Rebuke is still here. Interrupt. Hammer the Righteous and Crusader Strike have been baked into one. This has 2 charges. It hammers a target for damage, but if you stand in your consecration, it also does AoE damage. That's all it does. Okay? It doesn't boost anything else. It can trigger Grand Crusader, but we'll talk about that when we get to Grand Crusader, which is what resets your Avenger Shield. But it doesn't, it's not giving you Holy Power because Holy Power doesn't exist. It doesn't boost your other abilities. None of that. It just does damage. It's a filler that you use. Redemption is still here. Thank God. Tanks can res again. Hand of Reckoning is still your taunt. Shield of the Righteous is still Shield of the Righteous. It's going to do damage. It's going to reduce damage you take by 44% for 4.5 seconds, and if you stand in consecration, the effect of it is going to increase. Again, stand in your consecration. Use it on cooldown. Use that thing. Stand in it. Use it. And it's very important to keep in mind, the glyphs and everything are changing, so they don't exist as much anymore. So consecration moving with you, that might be added in later on, something that you can add to your spells. You actually use the glyph and it changes the spells in the spell book instead of a little interface like they have now. If they do not give them a way to move consecration with you, you need to keep in mind it's very important where you lay your consecration. You better fucking stand in it, because if not, you are losing out on so many bonuses. It will be noticeable that you don't have it. But Shield of the Righteous has 3 charges. Again, because you don't have Holy Power, you have 3 charges that you have to manage. And these charges, because it's, reducing the damage you take, the damage, not physical, not magical, the damage you take by 44%. That's a lot. That's an absolute ton of damage reduction. But it's only for short windows with 3 charges. So that's basically their resource. Their resource is charges of Shield of the Righteous, and making sure that you use them when you need to. You use other damage reduction in between that, and keep yourself either always under some sort of damage reduction, or making sure that those periods where you are weak, that you go ahead and call for an external, or that it's not a highly intensive point of the fight. I believe that that's still the direction that they're moving the prop paladin. You're either always under a damage reduction, or it's not an intensive part of the fight. That's what you want to go ahead and try to keep in mind. Judgment has been changed to, it used to give you a charge of Shield of the Righteous, but that was bad design. Why was that bad design? When you would crit, you would get an extra you would get a charge of Shield of the Righteous, and that would basically make it so that you had to play with 2 charges of Shield of the Righteous used, because then you'd have 1 recharging, 1 sitting in the bank, and if you got a crit, you would get 2 charges and still have 1 recharging. Instead of sitting at 2, getting an extra charge, and immediately all the recharge time has been wasted. So it was a really, really annoying little thing that was going on. It didn't feel good, so they went ahead and they took a little bit of an inspiration from the Brewmaster that's reducing their brews every time they Tiger Palm and Keg Smash, and they made Judgment reduce the cooldown on Shield of Righteous by 2 seconds or 4 seconds on a critical strike. Massive improvement, massive improvement. But again, Judgment, use it on cooldown. You should always have a charge of Shield of Righteous recharging. You use this to keep it going, keep the rotation going. You want to have this up as much as possible, so you're protecting yourself. Now, Grand Crusader still exists. When you avoid a melee attack or use Hammer of the Righteous, you have a 15% chance to reset the remaining cooldown of Avenger's Shield. Fantastic. I just realized I made a mistake. I'm on page 2 instead of page 1. I'm going to go to page 1 right now. Forgive me, I'm an idiot, but, you know, I'm not paying attention. What am I doing? I'm not professional. Anyways, Heart of the Crusader is still going to increase your mount speed. I'm just going to go to page 3, finish it off, and then I'll go back to the first one. Again, I am sorry. But your mastery is still Divine Bulwark. So go back to page 1, which I should have realized as soon as I didn't see Avenger's Shield first, because it is an A. Whoops. Ardent Defender is still here. It's a 3-minute cool... No, it's not a 3-minute. It's a 2-minute cooldown that gets reduced by artifact traits. But it's going to reduce all damage you take by 20% for 8 seconds. When it's active, if something would kill you, it said gives you 12% maximum health. Pretty awesome. You still can clear poisons and diseases. And then Avenger's Shield. Avenger's Shield still does what it does now. Hits a target, bounces to 2 other targets, does damage, silences them. That's all it does. At its very, very base, all Avenger's Shield does is do damage and do AoE. Important to keep in mind. It's very similar to Hammer of the Righteous. It does not boost anything. It does not increase your survivability. It doesn't do anything like that besides damage. Baseline. We're talking you zone into Legion, you start leveling. It's not giving you any defensive benefit. If you're doing dungeons, just know it's not giving you defensive benefit at first. And it's important to keep that in mind. Why? Because I think that a lot of classes are very heavily dependent on their artifact traits, to the point that it's going to feel punishing playing those classes until you max out the artifact tree. And that shit takes a long fucking time. It takes a long time, and you have to keep that in mind. They're balancing all these classes with the idea that you're going to have all your talents in the artifact tree mostly maxed out. And the problem with that is maybe the first raids here, maybe the first couple of months, you won't have it all. You're going to have to choose what you want to do. And putting in points into that artifact tree, it takes so long. It's painful. It really is. You have to keep that in mind. Avenger Shield baseline does not do anything for you defensively to keep you alive. Consecrate. Does damage, amplifies a bunch of other abilities. Keep this on cooldown. Stay inside of it. And make sure that you're getting the maximum from your spells. You also have Avenging Wrath, which is a very welcome return to the prot Paladin. It increases all damage and healing you deal by 35% for 20 seconds. This is a fantastic DPS and survival cooldown. Admittedly, the survival part is not as big, because let's be for real, the biggest heal that you have is Light of the Protector. You have a couple other things that are going to heal you, give you shields as well from artifact traits and talents. But honestly, Avenging Wrath giving you a nice extra boost to your Light of Protector, which is also boosted by Consecrate, is nice. But mostly it's a damage cooldown, which I'm okay with. Tanks should have a damage cooldown. They need moments where they can abuse their abilities. I find that fantastic. I'm glad they added that to the Paladin. Divine Shield still here, 5-minute protection from all spells, still good. Blessing of Freedom still here, 25-second cooldown, removes impairments. This is not a call to hands anymore. These are blessings. Keep that in mind. Divine Steed, a new spell. It replaces basically the talented sprint that you could get before, but this is baseline. 45-second cooldown. You ride your holy mount around. It increases movement speed by 100%. Usable indoors. Fantastic. I think it's really cool. It's really thematic. It's nice to have. Then you have Blessing of Protection. Hand of Protection still exists. Blessing of Sacrifice. Sag is still there. It's actually a 3-minute cooldown. The artifact trait reduces the 2-minute cooldowns. And again, just with Consecrate, I have not yet seen a glyph that removes the actual damage being redirected to you, so that you can use it on your tank friend and not murder yourself. I would be very interested to see if that gets changed or not. Because again, having this tank cooldown is fantastic. I'm a big proponent of tanks having rage utility. It's fantastic they have this, but at the same time you have to be careful not to kill yourself by the 30% damage that gets transferred to you. Still have Flash of Light. It heals for like a teeny little bit. You probably never use this in regular play. And then your artifact ability is Eye of Tyr. 1-minute cooldown. Does flashing blinding light from your shield, which is your artifact, Truth Guard. Does some damage, doesn't matter. It reduces all damage they deal to you by 25% for 9 seconds. It's another damage reduction. Is it super fun or cool? Not really. Is it nice to have? Yes. Because again, I believe, I don't know for sure, I'm not, a Blizzard developer, but I believe the intent of the Paladin is you are constantly under some sort of damage mitigation. And when, for example, you're out of Shield of the Righteous charges, or you're saving them up for a talent that I'm going to tell you that's made his amazing return to the prot Paladin, I'm super happy about. If you're saving up those charges, you want to keep yourself under some sort of damage reduction. And you don't want to waste your healer's time all the time. You don't want to have to say, hey, sack me, or hey, do this, do that. You want to try to keep yourself self-sufficient and save those things for big tank moments and during the fight. So if you are saving up, or you don't need this for a specific thing, you can pop this in 9 seconds. You have 25% damage reduction. Not as strong as Shield of the Righteous, but it can keep you propped up, and especially good because it's AoE around you. I like it. It's a pretty cool talent, and it actually looks cool. It's like a little shield glare. It's pretty fun. It's pretty nice. Then you have all the spells on page 2 that I've already explained. Okay, so as you can see, baseline, what you're doing is you're basically using Shield of the Righteous to keep yourself with active mitigation up, or using it at a specific time in a fight. Always trying to keep one charge recharging. You're going to be using Judgment on cooldown to reduce the time that you're waiting on a charge. You're going to want to stay in your Consecrate for as long as possible to increase your Light of the Protector, do a little bit of AoE damage as well, but more importantly, making sure that you're cycling through those Shield of the Righteous charges, filling with Hammer of the Righteous, Avenger's Shield, and things like that. So that's baseline. That's no talent differences or artifact differences, none of that stuff. So let's go into talents now. The talents for the prot Paladin has a lot of really, really good tiers, in my opinion. But the problem is they're only good when you're in a group setting. For example, the 60 tier in its entirety is almost a waste of time for just you. Unless you're in a group setting, which, I guess we're talking about raiding, it's only going to really matter there. I'm a mythic tank, that's how I think. But, solo play, I'm pretty sure all 3 of these are useless. Besides maybe Blessing of Spell Warding, but even then that's kind of still useless. I don't know. It's weird. But let's go through them. At the first tier, you have First Avenger. Increases the damage of Avenger Shield by 50%, increases the chance for its remaining cooldown to be reset by abilities and talents by 50%, but it now only hits one target. So this is very much like the Glyph. It's going to increase the damage of it, it's going to be proccing all the time, but it only hits one target. So this is for single target fights. Okay, pretty nice. Hand of the Protector. I see the point of this spell, but I think it's dumb. Hand of the Protector replaces Light of the Protector, and it calls down to Holy Light to heal a friendly target for 38% of the target's missing health. So let me just check this real quick. Okay. So when I was originally leveling up, I looked at this talent, and it said 25% of the target's missing health, just like Light of the Protector did. So I was under the impression that it scaled under the same thing, but it looks like Light of the Protector is 25% of your missing health, but if you stand in Consecration, the effect is increased by 20%, versus this being a flat 38%. The good thing about this is you can target someone else. What does this mean? You can save a friendly... Save is maybe a strong word. You can use it on a friendly ally, maybe your tank, maybe a healer, maybe a DPS that stepped out of line. You can use it on them to sort of heal them, boost them up a little bit. It has a wide range. It lets you just... It gives you a little bit of raid utility, it gives you a little bit of help for your tanking buddy. But the problem is it's still 38% of the target's missing health, and it's not boosted by Consecrate, as far as I was able to tell from the tooltip. And it's not... I don't know if it gets all the same benefits of Light of the Protector. If it does, that'd be very, very powerful heal on other players. If it gets those benefits, and if it scales with Consecrate, does all that stuff, I can see this being a very, very useful ability for helping your tank, helping other people, and helping yourself. This could be very good. But if it's not benefiting from any of those things from other players, I don't see the point of this spell, personally speaking. Again, testing, figuring out how it works exactly, figuring out what boosts it, what doesn't boost it, that's going to determine how good this is. Then you have Consecrated Hammer. Hammer of the Righteous has no cooldown, always gains its damage bonus of Consecration. I wasn't able to get this to work because I would, for example, choose it. Let's see if it does it here. So, it still goes on cooldown, is the problem. It has a 3-second cooldown. It's not supposed to have a cooldown if you choose this. So, unfortunately, I just assumed it was bugged out or it wasn't working. So I ran around with First Avenger. I didn't get a chance to see how it plays when Avenger Shield bouncing around all over the place like I really wanted to, because I didn't feel like taking a wasted talent in hand with Protector, which on my other character, which I was doing tanking and stuff in the dungeons, was still at 25%, and this just wasn't working. So I ended up just rolling around First Avenger, but I can definitely see this being a useful thing, just to have a filler that you're constantly pressing. If you're doing AoE especially, that could be fantastic. But it's definitely going to come down to, is it a single target, is it an AoE fight, or do you need that little extra heal if this turns out to be good? The next tier is Holy Shield. Increases block chance by 10%, allows you to block spells. Your successful blocks deal damage back to the attacker. I like it. It's a fun little ability to have. It just increases your survivability, just gives you more block chance, does some damage when you block. I think this ability is fine. I like it. Knight Templar reduces the cooldown Divine Steed by 50% and reduces all damage you take while mounted on your steed. By 20%. This turns your sprint into a damage reduction ability that you can use more often. If you see here, it's going to be a 22.5 second cooldown. I like this in the sense that it gives you another damage reduction. It gives you more of an ability to save up charges for Seraphim. The only problem is if you're using Knight Templar all the time for damage reduction, you won't have the sprint when you need it. And you don't have a tier that's all movement anymore. No, you have one movement ability and that's it. That's all you get. If you can't sprint out of something fast enough or you can't get to the other side because you just used your sprint ability as a damage reduction, that could fuck you. You just have to know about that. I think it's going to depend on the fights. It's going to depend on how much movement there is. It's going to depend on if this whole thing that I'm theorizing in my head of saving charges for Seraphim and always staying under a damage reduction, it's going to depend on that whether this is good or not. But then you also have a choice that's very static, passive, Last Defender. Every enemy within 8 yards reduces the damage that you take by 3%, and it does have diminishing returns. Essentially, what this talent is going to be is, in AoE fights with a lot of enemies, the diminishing returns is probably going to make that not worth it. But then again, maybe if there's constantly like 2 or 3, maybe 4 ads around you, maybe if it's a council fight, maybe the math will end up showing, hey, this gives you like a permanent 10% damage reduction, but when you get to like 5 targets, it's like maybe 11% instead of like 15%. So it'll probably scale down as you get a bunch of, because it's diminishing returns, but there'll probably be a sweet spot number that you'll want to take this for. This is very much the passive, just kind of AoE style. This is more damage reflecting. You get to block more. This is potentially reducing your damage. This is flat reducing your damage, and this is reducing a lot of damage at a specific moment, but at the cost of your speed. So that's the theme of this tier is damage reduction. And if you want it passively, if you want a chance to do it, but also giving you a damage component, or if you want as well as block and spell, which is fantastic. Or if you want it at a very specific moment, it's a high amount of damage. It's basically a cooldown. For 22 seconds, you get a cooldown. It's like what was Divine Protection? It's basically like giving you Divine Protection back, but it costs you your sprint, and that kind of doesn't feel good. Keep that in mind. Then you have Fist of Justice, Repentance, Blinding Light. All of these do exactly the same thing as they used to, except for the fact that Fist of Justice is not a new spell. It just Judgment reduces the remaining cooldown of Hammer Justice by 10 seconds every time you judge. Repentance, still really interesting because it's going to deal a target's up to a maximum of 25% of a target's health and damage over 1 minute. So you can target something, CC it, and just leave it alone. No one hit it, and by the time your repentance has worn off on it, 25% of its health is missing. That's kind of ridiculous. Will that ever be useful in an actual fight? Who knows? I mean, it's going to be likely that most raid, minions and ads aren't going to be repentanceable. And you probably don't want something just sitting around for a minute anyways, taking some damage. I don't know. It's just cool. It's just a cool little spell. And Blinding Light still kind of dazzles and disorients, all that kind of stuff. You'll probably take Fist of Justice for the most part. In challenge modes and dungeons, you'll probably want Repentance or Blinding Light. Blinding Light also just does damage, so it could be good in a raid scenario. If you don't really ever need to use any of these, there's not something you're going to be stunning all the time, you might just take this for the extra damage. Who knows? Then you have the level 60 tier, and this is completely dependent on having a party or a group. By yourself, as far as I'm able to tell through tooltips, this does jack shit. Blessing of Spell Warning. It replaces Blessing of Protection, and it's going to bless them and protect them from all magical attacks for 10 seconds. Cannot be used on the target with forbearance, and it causes forbearance. Basically, Bop stops physical damage. Spell warding blocks magical damage. Depending on the fight, this is going to be incredible because it's going to be able to be used on an ally and save them from raid mechanics, let you soak a raid mechanic. The one thing I'm not entirely sure of, and I wasn't going to test it in a dungeon because I might have gotten everyone killed, was the fact that Bop drops your, if you use it on yourself, very much like Divine Shield, enemies don't hit you anymore. So if you use this and you drop all threat, it's not going to be as useful for you unless you're very specifically soaking something or soaking an ability and you immediately cancel aura it. But I mean, it has potential there. It really does, especially since a lot of tank mechanics are magical abilities. So I like this spell. It's just not going to be as useful when you're by yourself. Blessing of Salvation is never going to be useful if you're by yourself. It does what it does now. It removes all threat from the target and all additional threat is transferred to you. I mean, prot paladins look like they deal a shit ton of damage, and they actually have DPS cooldowns. So it strikes me weird that they also have this because maybe, I don't know. Maybe a fight will require this. Other than that, you can throw on your off tank or your other tank just to troll them a little bit. But I'm not entirely sure when this will be useful, but I guess it's nice to have, I guess. Then you have Retribution Aura. Retribution Aura does holy damage to any enemy that melee strikes a non-tank or party raid member. So, if an enemy hits, usually, okay, in live, things do so much damage. If they hit someone that's not you or your co-tank once, they almost kill them. If that gets changed and they can take a little bit of hits, that's nice. But honestly, how many times? Okay, so maybe they'll get like 2 hits off on an enemy, on a friendly, and then they're on you. So now for the rest of the entire time that you're taking, this is pointless. I don't see the point of this. Maybe it should be any attack or any raid member takes damage, it should do holy damage back to them, but have like an internal cooldown so it can't like if the raid boss is doing AoE, arcane explosion all over the place. Every third, every fourth arcane explosion does holy damage back to him, so it doesn't scale out of control. Maybe that would make more sense. Retribution Aura, honestly, to me, it seems pointless. It'll proc a little bit at first, and then it won't for the rest of the fight, and you'll have a wasted talent slot. I think Blessing of Spell Warning, you'll probably have 25, maybe 100% of the time, unless you need to very specifically block physical damage. It kind of makes this a dead talent tier, in my personal opinion. 75, Bastion of Light. Immediately gives you 3 charges of Shield of the Righteous. It's a 3-minute cooldown. This will be good in certain situations that you need those extra charges on demand whenever you want them. I wasn't playing around with it too much because I didn't really feel the need for it. It's nice to have. It's on demand. You can have more charges. I guess it's fine. Then you have Crusader's Judgment. Judgment can also trigger Grand Crusader. So you're already using Judgment on cooldown, and you're going to definitely want to use Avenger Shield as much as possible. The only problem I have is baseline Avenger Shield doesn't give you any survivability. None. It's just damage. It's pointless. Until you max out your artifact traits and give it that extra boost that it needs to become a survivability option, this is pointless. So I think it's going to depend on where you are in your artifact collection, your points, all that kind of stuff, how far you are in leveling. You're going to probably take this towards the end, but in the beginning this is probably not going to be useful for you. And then you have Blessed Hammer. It replaces Hammer of the Righteous. It has a recharge just like it has multiple charges. It has 2 charges, and it throws out a Blessed Hammer that spirals outward, dealing damage, and every time it hits someone, their next auto attack does 15% less damage to you. So it looks just like a Spinning Hammer from Diablo or Johanna from Heroes of the Storm. It's pretty cool. You don't need a target to use it. And every time it hits something, that something's going to have 15% less damage to you on the next auto attack, which is kind of a big fucking deal. My only problem with that is because of its animation, it encourages you to try to get the Spinning Hammer to hit the same target multiple times. Especially big bosses, you're going to have multiple 50% damage reduction on their auto attacks, which is honestly a big part of a boss's damage to a tank. I honestly feel that this is going to be, for the most part, what people will take, and maybe switch to Crusader's Judgment if they want more damage, or if you've maxed out your tree and you're able to take advantage of the traits that gave Avenger Shield so much value later on. but this tier is interesting to me. I don't think Bastion of Light will be taken as often. I honestly struggle to think of situations where you're going to need all three charges Shield of Righteousness right now, because the truth is, if you're spending, if you have a 44% damage reduction up on you for past 12 seconds, and you're still getting hammered so hard that you need this back immediately, something's wrong. Something's going wrong. You need to change something. You fucked up at some point. I honestly feel like there's 15% less damage on auto attacks all the time, essentially, because you have such a low cooldown recharge on it and you're able to use it so often. I think it's going to be more useful until maybe you scale a little bit better, you get more gear, things of that nature. Interesting talents here. Then you have Aegis of Light. I love this spell. I do. 5-minute cooldown. It channels an Aegis of Light that protects you and your allies standing within 10 yards behind you for 20 seconds, reducing all damage taken by 20%. This animation is beautiful, and I'm going to show it to you once I've finished talking about the other ones. But what I like about this is, again, it's giving you raid utility, and more specifically, it's giving you a tank cooldown that embodies everything that a tank should be. Your allies that stand behind you take less damage. You stand in front of them. You're a bulwark of light that protects them. I love it. Paladins have always had the best thematic abilities, and this is just another little thing on the top where it's, hey, big arcane explosions are coming out. Stand behind me. I'll reduce everyone's damage by 20%. Hey, you know, me and the co-tank have to stand together because there's like a tethering effect that the boss does. He does damage to both of us. Let me just reduce both our damage by 20% even though we're already sharing a health pool. I love it. I love this spell. It's fantastic. I want more of this for all the tanks. I want all the tanks to have... I think most raid cooldowns should be given to tanks. You know? Let the healers have the big healing cooldowns. Let the tanks be the ones that reduce damage. I love it. It's fantastic. I'm going to show you the animation in just a little bit. Judgment of Light. Judgment applies Judgment of Light to the target. The next 40 auto attack or successful attacks against the target heal the attacker for 4,700 damage. It can only occur once per 1 second on each target. What does this mean? You judge a boss, your raid's attacking at the next 40 attacks, spells, auto attacks, any of that stuff, heal them for a little bit. It's basically a little bit of healing for every single person that's doing it. So in situations where the boss is standing still, again, Arcane Explosion. I'm going to keep saying this because the only spell I can remember, Arcane Explosion, but he's standing in the middle, everyone can hit him, gives you a little healing for everyone. I like this. I do. It's not as powerful as Aegis of Light. I don't think it'll ever see play as much as Aegis of Light will. But it's a nice like passive way of not having to worry about it, not having to think about it. Just give everyone some healing. Don't just take it. Just get healed. Don't worry about it. Then you have Consecrated Ground. 6 allies standing within your consecration receive some healing every second, and enemies have a reduced movement speed. I see this probably being the best choice for dungeons because honestly, and challenge modes especially, 5-minute cooldown is a long cooldown. You're not going to be able to use it as often. This is just constant, all the time healing. But AoE versus this on a very specific target that you judge that could die very quickly. So something to keep in mind. Let me just show you Aegis of Light. I was thinking about showing this, but it's not really something that matters to see. So let me just show you how cool this ability is. Look at that. Look at the glory that is the Protection Paladin. Oh my god. I love this spell. I love this spell. I'm going to take it every single time. I'm going to abuse the shit out of it. I'm going to be that, like, in my Mythic Manaroth raid, my Mythic team, we were doing Mythic Manaroth progression, and I just kind of had this idea of, you know, we're having trouble doing this soaking for the Wrath of Gul'dan. Just throw me in there. I'll stand in it, I'll diffuse magic, I'll use the legendary tank ring, and then I'll Zen meditation the very end of it and get out, walk away scot-free, absorb 90 stacks of the debuff. It'll be fine. And that's what we do now. I'm going to abuse the shit out of this spell. And positive, I'm not going to try to bug the encounter, but I'm going to take advantage of the spell and just use it as a tank cooldown, use it as it should be to protect my allies. It's going to be fantastic. I'm very excited for this spell, and I'm glad it exists. And then you have that 100 tier, which I have mixed feelings about. You have Righteous Protector, which Shield of the Righteous reduces the remaining cooldown Light of the Protector by 3 seconds. When I was leveling, when I was doing some tanking in dungeons, I found myself not using Light of the Protector that much. The truth of the matter is, a good healer will, for the most part, keep you pretty safe. In emergency situations, you pop Light of the Protector, and it will boost you up if you're setting Consecrate, if you have some boosts from the artifacts and all that kind of stuff. It will help keep you alive. But do you need to use it? Are you in situations where you're going to die so often that you need to reduce the cooldown of it? Probably not. I mean, If you're constantly in the situation where you need to reduce, if you're dropping low into dangerous territory where Light of the Protector can do its work more often than every 14 seconds, you might be doing something wrong. Something is not going right. Maybe you're not getting healed. Maybe it's way too intensive. Maybe you're just super undergeared. This could be good if you need to use them more than every 14 seconds, but otherwise, I see this as a very, like, maybe you're undergeared, maybe things are going wrong type of talent. I don't find myself using Lighter Protectors often, um, and it's really much just going to depend on are you dropping that low all the time? Because remember, if you're at 75% health, this isn't going to heal you for much. If you're at 25% health, God bless your soul, this will heal you for a bunch. But are you dropping down below 50% health so often you need to reduce it by 3 seconds every time you shield the righteous? I don't know. That's going to be on you. And then you have the glorious return of Seraphim. 30-second cooldown. The light temporarily magnifies your power, increasing haste, crit, mastery, and versatility by 4,000 something something, consumes up to 2 charges of the Shield of the Righteous, and lasts 8 seconds per charge. What does this mean? You want to use this with 2 charges so that you have it up for 16 seconds, and when you have it up for 16 seconds, essentially during that time you're having so many extra stats that, at least in the past, because it was also giving you bonus armor. Now that's something to keep in mind. I haven't seen anything with bonus armor. I don't know if that stat's gone. I don't know if they just decided that they don't want to deal with that anymore. I thought it was a fantastic thing to have in the game. I like having a very specific tank slot, tank stat versus what they're doing to cloaks and trinkets and rings, where everything is like no primary stat. Everyone uses everything, which is going to cause so much loot drama. I don't even want to think about it. But I like this because if it's still a defensive benefit, which it has some defensive benefit, but is it going to be enough to counteract not having the Shield of Righteous charges? Because again, it's 44% damage reduction. That's a shit ton, guys. That's a lot. Are all those stats going to be able to mitigate the fact that you've used two 44% charges? I don't know. The math will be able to tell there. But if it is in the way that I'm picturing it, it's very much keeping on to the current playstyle of you pop Seraphim, and that's your damage reduction, and you just have to kind of use other things, reduce the cooldown of Shield of the Righteous, make sure that as soon as you pop out of Seraphim, you use Shield of the Righteous, keep that up, use your other cooldowns such as Eye of Tyr, such as Divine Steed with Knight Templar, and you keep those other external things going on while you pull those 2 charges back up, pop it, and now you're in Seraphim, you're good to go, you're defensive again, you don't have to worry as much, versus the other playstyle of keeping Shield of Righteous on you all the time, reducing its cooldown, using other cooldowns to keep it going because you've chosen Righteous Protector or Final Stand instead of Seraphim. I like this because it's going through that whole tank DPS versus tank survivability, choosing what's more important in what situation, and I think that's fantastic. I love this. I really, really do. I encourage more choices like this because those are the good choices. And you have Final Stand. It reduces the cooldown of Divine Shield by 50%, and when you use Divine Shield, you also taunt all targets within 15 yards for 8 seconds. This will have some use in some situation. I can't think of one right now. In fact, the only thing I can think about using this is Thogar, Mythic, when you're soaking one train as a Brewmaster and you just kind of soak a train and then bring the ads over. Other than that, it's really hard for me to see a useful benefit for this. It reduces it to 2.5 minutes, which is nice, and it's going to taunt everything. But this is your level 100 talent. This is a big, it should be a big deal. It should be a big choice. It should be the thing that, you're really looking forward to when you're leveling. And I just don't think it compares to Seraphim or Righteous Protector. I think for the most part, Seraphim will be what you choose. If the math works out to make it worth it, you're going to be using this when you're confident in yourself, if it's able to produce enough damage reduction, or Righteous Protector when you undergear things and you need to make sure your Light of the Protector's up constantly so you can constantly use it to keep yourself alive. That's my opinion of how it's going to be. So a lot of interesting talents here. I want to see how this plays with Consecrated Hammer actually working. I want to see if Hand of the Protector get benefits from all the other abilities that benefit Light of the Protector. I want to see how important it's going to be. In every single fight, it's going to matter between having that extra damage reduction from Knight Templar, or you can just afford to have Holy Shield, Last Defender. I think this talent here is shit besides Spell Warning. And I love I'm gonna be hoping for all those situations I can use Aegis of Light. What I want to say the Protection Paladin is it feels like they have so many tools, so much rage utility, so much damage reduction. They can handle any situation. It's just that their play style isn't exactly the most fun because everything is kind of predetermined. You have to use Avenger's Shield basically on cooldown with the artifact traits, which I'm going to go ahead and show you now. I'm gonna come back to that whole rotation thing. Just give me a second. So the artifact Truth Guard, IF tier, it's gonna be doing what it does before, 25% damage to damage reduction to everything around you. Your minor traits are Truth Guard's Light, increase holy damage dealt by 8%, which is passive. You have increase your armor by 30% when under 40% health, which again is encouraging. When you drop down low, you need an emergency, you have a bunch of armor, you use Light of Protector, get yourself back up. Reduce the cooldown of Blessing and Sacrifice by a minute. Increase healing done by Light of the Protector by 30%. Decrease the cooldown of Ardent Defender by 30 seconds. Increase damage done of Hammer of the Righteous by 10%. Increase the damage reduction of Shield of the Righteous by 10%. Increase maximum health by 6%, which again, Paladins have had lower health than all the other tanks for a while now. While Ardent Defender is active, all melee attacks that strike you deal holy damage back to the target. Okay, a little bit of, smacking someone back when they hit you, just like Holy Shield. Increase the duration of Consecration by 3 seconds, which is good because you need to stand in it as much as possible. You need to have it down as much as possible. You have increased the critical strike chance of Judgment by 10%, which again is going to be giving you those reductions on your... It's going to take 4 seconds off of your Shield of Righteous every time you crit, which is important to keep in mind. You want to be trying to crit all the time. I don't know if that's worth stacking crit, but it's important to know that you need to make sure you watch your crits. This one, I'm not sure if it works, and if it does work, if it matters. Each active forbearance you have caused increases the cooldown recovery rate of your forbearance causing abilities by 20%. What does this mean? If you use Blessing of Protection, Divine Shield, Lay on Hands, or Blessing of Spell Warding, you cause forbearance for 30 seconds. When you use it, and then use another... So if I cheese a mechanic, I Divine Shield, right? It's on cooldown. I have forbearance for 30 seconds. It's done. Then I'm in an emergency situation. I Lay on Hands. I'm healed back to maximum health. Cause forbearance. It technically would reduce... It would make this recharge faster, and this as well. It would make both of these forbearance-causing abilities recharge faster. And then if I use Blessing of Protection again, it'll be even faster. And then eventually in the fight I'll get Divine Shield back first because I used it first and I'll be able to use it again. The problem is they have such huge cooldowns, 10 minutes through 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Maybe you'll get 2 uses of these in a fight, but that's because maybe some fights are 10 minutes, not because you have this trait. In fact, I honestly would argue that you'll probably never get 3 uses of these abilities because there's no way something is going to be that long. And I honestly don't think that even using it that much more often is going to increase the recovery rate. I don't see it. I honestly don't see it. It's going to depend, I think, in the middle of a fight. I have no idea if this is going to be worth it or not. I mean, maybe you'll take it just because you want, every trait because OCD and stuff. I think the math is going to determine whether this is just a colossal waste of time and you need to wait until the very last trait to pick this up or what. But then you have increase the damage dealt by Avenger's Shield by 10%. This is important. Remember this. Increased damage of Avenger's Shield. So then you have Light of the Titans. Shield of the Righteous empowers your next Light of the Protector to heal for an additional 200,000 over 15 seconds. So that means you Shield the Righteous, and then you Light of the Protector at some point. You make sure you use Shield the Righteous before Light of the Protector. And not only is it going to give you a heal depending on your missing health, but then it's going to give you a hot, which is nice because again, Light of the Protector is an important part of your toolkit for when you're being hit hard, you're going down low. When you're missing a decent chunk of health, you use this, heal yourself, and now you have a hot on you, which is nice. It's going to give you that extra boost, which again it needs because baseline is kind of shitty. Then you have Tears Enforcer. The Knowledge of the Watchers causes Truth Guard to deal a bunch of AoE damage to all enemies that it hits with Avenger's Shield. So this is increasing the damage. This is making it cause AoE damage. Keep that in mind because it all ties back into Bulwark of Order. Avenger's Shield shields you for 8 seconds, absorbing as much damage as it dealt. This is why you want to use Avenger's Shield on cooldown. This is why until you get Heart of the Avenger, Tears Enforcer, and Bulwark of Order, Avenger Shield is kind of pointless and moot because all it does is do damage. Once you get this, it's giving you an absorbed shield. It's giving you more reduction, more ability to stay alive while you're waiting for your Shield of Righteous charges, and you're making sure that you have active mitigation up constantly on yourself. And that's why it's one of those things that I think is kind of bad when it comes to the artifact tree. Because until you max out these things, or at least this one, Avenger Shield seems pointless. Even with all these traits and stuff, Hammer of the Righteous does not baseline do anything for your survivability. You have to take Blessed Hammer to make it do some sort of damage reduction. Okay? And until that point, Avenger Shield does nothing as well. You need these traits to make it do something, which sucks in my personal opinion. So how does it end up playing? If you don't take Seraphim, if you take like Righteous Protector, essentially what you end up doing is you come up to a thing, you throw your shield at it, you Shield the Righteous, Judgment to reduce the cooldown, Hammer the Righteous, you should have pressed Consecration because I'm a bad player, you Hammer the Righteous again because it's off, Blessed Hammer, Judgment, Blessed Hammer, Judgment, Righteous, Shield the Righteous down, Judgment, nope, Avenger's Wrath, Consecrate, Blessed Hammer, Shield the Righteous, Judgment, Blessed Hammer, Shield the Righteous, Blessed Hammer, Judgment, Consecrate, Blessed Hammer, Shield the Righteous. Basically, that's what you're doing. And then I'm coming up, no charges, Eye of Tear. Make sure I have that damage reduction while I'm waiting for some charges. Have a couple seconds. That's basically what you end up doing. You keep using you cycle through your abilities. Basically, whatever comes up, you use. And you try to make sure that you have some sort of damage reduction, primarily being Shield the Righteous on you. You Eye of Tear maybe to fill in some gaps. You make sure Judgment's on cooldown, Consecration's on cooldown. You make sure you use Light of the Protector if you need to make sure that you stay alive. That's one of those things. The reason people have been so pissed off about the rotation of Prot Paladin is that you don't have a lot of choices for what you do. Your resource, because yes, they do have a resource. Everyone get your heads out of your ass. They have a resource. It's just a boring resource. That's something to keep in mind. You can't. People have been saying, they have no resource. They need holy power. They have some depth. Your resource is Shield of the Righteous charges. It's not a fun resource. It's not an interesting resource. It's not an important resource, but it's a resource. God damn it. That's what you need to focus on. That's the intent. Pay attention, people. The problem is it's kind of boring, and it just is. With Seraphim, it kind of alleviates that because now you're in a situation where, okay, you're running up to a target. You have your 3 charges. So the first thing you do is Avenger Shield, Consecrate, Seraphim, Avenging Wrath, Judgment, Blessed Hammer, Blessed Hammer. You have Seraphim up, so you don't have to worry about Shield of the Righteous. You're just trying to build up the stacks. Keep that Consecrate, keep the Judgment, Avenger Shield, keep the Judgment. Seraphim is going to run out soon, so you can start using your Shield of the Righteous charges. So you keep that up, Shield of the Righteous down, use it again, Consecrate. Now you're trying to save up for your next Seraphim. So you Shield of the Righteous, you Judgment. Okay, as soon as it runs out, we're going to Eye of Tear. Got that damage reduction going on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, Seraphim again, it's off cooldown. You weren't able to use 2 charges that time. You have Avenger Shield, Consecrate again. And then you start getting into that kind of rotation where you try to save up charges for Seraphim. Actually, I think it did take 2 charges because that was way longer than 8 seconds. But essentially, if you take that talent, that's how you start rotating it in. You want to make sure that you use Seraphim whenever it's off cooldown, and that you pull up charges when it's off cooldown, and you use your other abilities like Eye of Tear or maybe even maybe not Aegis of Light, but Ardent Defender has a low enough cooldown that you can use it to shore up that stuff, as well as using Consecration, Avenger Shield, Blessed Hammer, or Hammer the Righteous in between those things to fill. Ultimately, I think that at low gear levels, it's going to be a shitty rotation because you don't have enough haste, you don't have enough stats to really make it matter. You're not going to be critting as often. Your Shield of the Righteous charges are going to kind of suck. But once you get some gear and everything, I think it picks up. I think it plays well. Honestly, like I'm just going to throw it out there. I think it plays well. I do. I don't know how many hate comments I'm going to get for that. I hope you guys that have just started watching me don't immediately unsubscribe and hate me, but I think it plays fine, guys. The changes that they made have made a difference, a big difference. Judgment always reducing the cooldown and not just giving you a charge is a fantastic change. giving you Avenging Wrath as a DPS and a little bit survivable, but more as a DPS cooldown is fantastic. Giving us back Seraphim. Yes, thank you. You are listening, Blizzard, and I appreciate that. I think it's fantastic what you've done here. As far as the other things go, I mean, First Avenger is going to synergize with artifact traits because more Avenging Wrath means more absorb shields. But I like some of these the choices that you're going to have to be making. A lot of the other ones don't really seem like choices that'll matter. But most of the talents are okay. The artifact traits are a little bit strong. The rotation will pick up once you have some of those artifact traits, once you have the talents, and once you get a little bit of a gear sailing, which is like every class. There's some room for it to improve and become better. And actually, I want to try Knight Templar. So we're going to go ahead and run in here again. And we're going to do... run away from him. So Avenging Shield, Consecrate, Seraphim, Avenging Wrath, Judgment, Blessed Hammer, Judgment, Blessed Hammer, Consecrate again, Blessed Hammer, Shield. We're going to wait for the Seraphim to run out. Wait for the Seraphim to run out. Wait for it to run out. Wait for it to... Shield the Righteous, Judgment, Blessed Hammer, Consecrate, Shield the Righteous, Blessed Hammer, Judgment, Avenging Shield, Eye of Tyr. Do that. Judgment. Seraphim's back up. You use 2 charges. Consecrate. Blessed Hammer. Judgment. Blessed Hammer. Avenger Shield. Consecrate's off cooldown. We're going to wait for Seraphim to run out. When it runs out, we're going to pop our Divine Steed because now it's going to have damage reduction. So we're going to do that. And just waiting. Oh, there you go. Blessed Steed. Damage reduction for 20 seconds while we're waiting for Seraphim to recharge. It's done. Shield the Righteous. Judgment. Avenger Shield, Blessed Hammer, Judgment. Come on, Seraphim. Come on, Seraphim. Come on, Seraphim. There we go. We had a couple of seconds there of no damage reduction. You want to hope that you're not taking too much damage. If you are, that's when you would pop your Light of the Protector. You keep that in mind. When you cannot cover yourself with Shield of the Righteous, you use Light of the Protector when you get dropped down low so you can then bring yourself back up. So when Seraphim runs out, we're going to make sure that we cast Shield of the Righteous. Then we're going to Consecrate. Then we're going to Blessed Hammer. Then we're going to Judgment because it's the most important thing that we have. Shield of the Righteous again because it wore off. Okay. Blessed Hammer. Eye of Tyr. Judgment. Consecrate. Gonna try to wait for this. Come on, you have a couple seconds. 9 seconds while you wait for Eye of Tyr to run out. Okay, Seraphim, back up. That's what I envisioned the ideal rotation is going to end up happening. You're going to be using all these things to make sure you protect yourself until you get Seraphim back up. And in that moment, like you saw there, where I had a couple seconds where I was waiting for Seraphim to come back and I didn't use Shield of Righteous because I was waiting for the 2 charges, then you're going to want to use, let's say you get hit for very hard. You have no damage reduction. You get hit for half your health, or you get hit to like 75% health. You get hit a little more. Light of Protector. Just heal yourself back up because it's going to cover that gap for 14 seconds. I think that's how it's going to play. I'm okay with it. I really am. Your resource is your charges, your protection. Your resource is cooldowns to keep myself alive. Now, the negative of that is other tanks have cooldowns just to be cooldowns. They have cooldowns for boss abilities. They have cooldowns for there's a lot of ads. Let me make sure I'm protecting myself. If you're using it in this way, Eye of Tyr, you can't use that for specific boss abilities. If you take the Knight Templar, you can't use you can't use that for specific boss abilities. You might even dip into Argent Defender, which hopefully you don't because it's so powerful. And then you keep Guardian of Ancient Kings as your big cooldown, Aegis Light for your raid cooldown yourself. It is something to keep in mind that you might sacrifice some things for specific boss abilities, but at the same time, Brewmasters have one fucking cooldown. So it's never going to be a situation that you need multiple cooldowns to stay alive, at least as far as I think. But I like it. I do. I'm just gonna say it. I like Protection Paladin on Legion right now. I do. I think that once you have all the gears turning and working together, I think it's powerful. I think you have an answer for every situation. You have raid utility for all the situations. You have tools that'll help your raid and help you get through mythic encounters. As long as the tuning is right and you don't just get trucked every time you get hit, I find Protection Paladins to be possibly one of the most reliable tanks in the expansion when it comes out. I love that they have Aegis of Light. I love Blessing and Spell Warding. I like having different choices for how you want to take the encounters. I like that they still have all their blessings for just general raid utility. It's hard to argue with the weaknesses. It's hard to see weaknesses in Protection Paladin outside of if they just get hit really hard, which is what their life is on WoT right now. That's the truth. If they just get hit so bad that they can't stay alive, even with all their damage reduction, using the Seraphim rotation, or using their heal, constantly having it off cooldown so you can heal yourself back up, if even with this you, like, let's say you go super, super defensive. Let's say this does get the benefit of Lighted Protector, and everything's making more, and it just does a bunch of heal, right? So we'll go Handed Protector, Holy Shield. We'll go ahead and take this, because why not? We'll take, I have no idea. Actually, we'll take that. And then you're taking all these really tanky things. If you go super tank and you're still getting smashed in the face by a mythic boss, yeah, prop paladins are probably not good. But with all these tools, and especially when I was doing my dungeon, I felt unstoppable in a dungeon. It felt great. I felt like, I don't have to worry about anything. I just keep myself alive. It felt really good. And I honestly think that as far as like offensive, defensive trade, there's a couple of talents here that you can make that trade, like Seraphim, Righteous Protector, things like that. I love that they just have a DPS cooldown. I like prop paladins. I think they are positioned to be one of the best tanks, as long as bosses don't smash their face in. And it looks like they actually do a decent amount of DPS as well. I like it. I mean, overall, these changes have been positive. The prop paladin community has been absolutely fucking livid. They've been dying for some changes, some sort of communication. Blizzard has been very, very mute, and then they introduced a bunch of changes because they're kind of going through all the classes and choosing some and then doing things. I wish they would just say, hey, we're looking at you guys, we're not ready to announce something just yet, a little more often, because then people would stop losing their minds. But I'm just going to be honest, Prop Paladin is something that I'm keeping in my head as a potential main or secondary character to go ahead and use. I still think that every raid should probably have a Vengeance Demon Hunter or a Blood DK just for mass grip, even though it's going to be not as powerful because you don't have as access to many of them. And the Guardian Druid is just still probably the best tank, but Prop Paladin is right there. It's good. It's better than a Warrior. Let me say that super fucking clear. Way better than a Warrior. Probably more survivable than a Vengeance. Either is able to survive as equally or a little bit less than a Blood DK. Because Blood DKs just have, tools out the fucking ass right now. But I like it. I do. I think it's positioned very powerfully. The changes have made the rotation smoother. It's made it playable. It's made it feel good. The other talents, the Return of Seraphim, Avenging Wrath, I like it. I'm very, very happy with Prop Paladin. And it is, as far as I'm concerned, not an insult to my keyboard to play. And I hope that Preach, whom I absolutely love and adore and is a big influence for why I do this, I hope that he comes back, plays the Prop Paladin, and has more of a better opinion about it. But anyways, guys, this has been my updated impressions here on the Legion Alpha for the Protection Paladin. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, if you stuck around, you watched the whole thing, I just want you to know that I appreciate it so much. And it means a lot to me that people are willing to sit here and listen to me talk and just share my thoughts and my opinions, my experiences for everything that I'm going to be doing here in Legion. If you liked the video, go ahead and give it a like. More importantly, if you want to see more of this, I have a Brewmaster to do. Then I'm going to be taking a look at all the Legion legendary items that have been released on the Alpha. If you like this, if you want to see more of it, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to me. I appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'm just thankful. I really am. So I hope you guys have a wonderful night.